World of Warcraft Class Talent System panel. Enjoy the panel here on DirecTV.
Welcome to the World of Warcraft Class Talent System panel. Your panelists are Greg Street and Tom Chilton.
Hello again, BlizzCon. We were just here. Deja vu. Okay, well, as you probably already know, we're here to talk about the talent system, all the new stuff that we've done with it, and to give you guys a sneak peek at what we've done with your class. So let's open this vault of knowledge. Or vault of idiocy, whatever, you know. All right, so Talents 2.0. We spent a little bit of time talking about this in the preview panel, the World of Warcraft, Mists of Pandaria preview panel. But now we'd like to go into more depth, talk a little bit more, recap some of the philosophies, that sort of stuff, and then make our way through all the different classes. So, as you may realize by now, this represents a major change to the class talent trees. And it's really kind of a new phase of development for our talent system. The Cataclysm talent system was still very similar in a lot of ways to the original talent system, but we had these ideas in the back of our mind kind of, squeaking around that were telling us that we had bigger, better things to do with it. So the goal here is that you're standing next to another combat rogue, for example, and this combat rogue has different talents than you do. Whoa, wouldn't that be something? Holy crap. And they're not just an idiot, right? So, as I said before, character customization was the original point of talents in the first place. That's what we set out to do back in 2004, somewhere around, I don't know, I think it was around April or May of 2004 when we were talking about this. And that's what we kind of thought we were going to accomplish. But, over time, we've really seen that cookie-cutter builds have dominated the scene. And players have told us, we want more talent customization. We did the Cataclysm talent revamp with that kind of idea in mind, hoping to give players, more meaningful choices than they had before. But, really, while we made some improvements to how clean the system is and all that sort of thing, we still don't really feel like we delivered it on a level that players would really be happy with. So, time to do it over. So this new model is all about customization, making choices that are interesting and difficult choices. And so, when you look at a class now, the class is really going to be comprised of three things. And the first, of course, is your core class abilities. And these are abilities that are available to everybody of that character class, whether or not you're, arms or protection or fury, to take the warrior for an example. So, all warriors obviously learn heroic strike. It's like that today. It'll continue to be like that in this case. We also have spec abilities, and this is something that we're doing a lot more with than we did before. The spec abilities in today's game, as of Cataclysm, are just that one ability that you get, like Mortal Strike for picking arms. But now it translates into quite a few new things. And that can include abilities that are either currently core abilities, if they only make sense to really work out for a certain spec, or they could be old talents, or they could be the existing abilities that we have now. So in this case, for the warrior example, only arms warriors will be able to learn slam. And finally, we have talents. And any warrior can pick from the same sets of talents. Now, what's very important to us is that players are making apples-to-apples comparisons about their talent choices, right? One of the things that we've learned over time is that if you put let's say, a survivability ability up next to a DPS ability, and you are playing a DPS, role, for example, let's say you're an arms warrior, which one are you more likely to pick? Gee, I wonder. I think I'll have to take the DPS ability. And that really saps the actual reality of choice from the decision. However, what we feel like is if we present you with three different options that are apples-to-apples comparisons, for example, three different survivability abilities, and say, here they are, here's three of them, they're all cool in different ways, pick one, then there's only so wrong you can go with that, right? It becomes more of a choice of your style of play, what abilities appeal to you more as a player, and those choices can really actually add up to being create a very different character once you look at your character overall. If we have DPS abilities in there, they'll be compared against other DPS abilities. So you'll be picking one of 3 different DPS abilities, or utility abilities, or mobility abilities, or survivability, all that kind of stuff. So in this case, it's crowd control. Throwdown would be put up against 2 other crowd control abilities. So you'd have to pick, well, which style crowd control suits you best? So here are a bunch of different warrior core abilities. Many of you are probably very familiar with these. Of note, Enrage is in there. So that's an example of a really significant talent for warriors that we don't want it to just go away. It's kind of a cool mechanic and all that. But now all warriors are going to have the passive Enrage. And at level 10, you'll still choose your spec. And so here's the warrior example. The warrior's going to choose between arms, fury, and protection. And that's going to have a whole bunch of implications. So if you're the fury warrior, here are the abilities that you would get at the different levels. And so that implies that these aren't necessarily abilities that you would get as arms or as protection. There may be a little bit of overlap when it's necessary and when it makes sense, but for the most part, these are very distinct. Like Flurry, for example. Because before, you didn't want to be that warrior that didn't pick Flurry, right? That wasn't really a choice, not if you were sane. So at level 15, you'll pick your first talent. And in this particular example, you're looking at the warrior and you're comparing 3 different mobility abilities against each other. Do I want Juggernaut? Do I want Double Time, which essentially allows you to use a charge twice in a row? Or do I want the Warbringer ability? So you're going to pick which mobility ability in this case makes the most sense for your character and your style of play and the things that you do. This guy picked Warbringer. And we'll continue to go through all these different examples with the different character classes in a moment. So some of the other philosophies that go along with this are that it gives you access to stuff that you could never really access before in terms of the combinations, right? So in the past, if you were, let's say you're a rogue, and let's say you've chosen subtlety, well, you kind of know that, well, I'm going to get Shadow Step as a subtlety rogue, and I'm going to have, preparation, I'm going to have that sort of thing. But you were never really able to combine an ability like that with an ability, let's say, like Killing Spree. And because these different talents are now going to be able to play against each other in the same tree, you'll be able to create all kinds of new combinations of the cool talents that there already are in the game that are really meaningful in ways that you never could before. And really that's at the crux of giving you guys a lot more control over your character, a lot more flexibility, and a lot more customization. Yeah! We'll also be adding several new overpowered feeling talents. So there's going to be new stuff in the different trees that you've never seen before. Also bear in mind as we go through these trees, as Greg said in the past, which is that don't make assumptions about the talents that you see in there in terms of how they operate today. A lot of these talents, once they're in this kind of system, they will change in terms of their cooldown or their duration or some of the details of their effects. That's because they aren't necessarily all layered on top of each other. In the past, we've had to essentially gimp some abilities because we had to worry about, well, first you can gouge the guy, and then you could kidney punch him, and then you could, blind him, then you can do this, that, and the other. Utilize those abilities more and more. And so in a lot of cases, this opens up a lot of flexibility for us that we didn't have. And so as we're going through these also, if you don't see a beloved talent, don't worry. It's probably something we just gave to your spec or as a core ability or something like that. This is definitely, there's not an intent here to take away a whole bunch of awesome stuff. We're moving things around and putting them in places where they actually make for interesting choices. An example, all holy priests now have Circle of Healing. Woohoo! And hopefully you'll come away with this not feeling like they're mandatory talents. And every choice should be hard but fun. Screenshot time. So rather than disappointing everybody by just walking off the stage, we're now just going to go through every freaking talent. So, Greg, take it away.
We're going to iterate a lot on these individual talents. Obviously, these are not set in stone. You guys haven't even played them yet. Don't get too obsessed about the numbers or, oh my god, 2-minute cooldown, that's OP. We can get to all that. Try to look at the spirit of the talent, what we're trying to do. We have 10 classes. The monk talent tree wouldn't mean anything to you guys anyway, so we'll skip that one. We still have 10 others. Buckle up. We're going to go in alphabetical order, so if you're a warrior, you can go get a beer, come back a little later. DK. First DK tier is all about diseases. Outbreak is a current ability. It's up against Roiling Blood, which lets your blood boil act like pestilence, and the return, by popular demand, of Corpse Explosion. The way this works is if a target dies with your diseases on it, you can then target that corpse and blow it up. Next tier, we have 3 survivability buttons. You can choose Lichborn, you can choose Anti-Magic Zone, or you can choose Bone Shield. We're hoping that the blood decays don't just say, oh, I have to have this, because the other 2 can be pretty useful as well. All right, level 45 is about movement and control. Death's Advance and Chillblains are current abilities that the DKs out there are probably familiar with. And then we have a new ability called Asphyxiate. You lift your target off the ground and strangle them. You'll see what we do with some of these talents is if you get Asphyxiate, it replaces Strangulate. It's kind of like a improved Strangulate. So you don't have both of them, you just have the more awesome version. All right, level 60, we have a healing tier. DKs have always been a little bit about self-healing, particularly the tanks. We still have Death Pact and Vampiric Blood in here, and a new ability called Death Siphon, which lets you to suck away a little bit of used shadow damage and heal yourself a little bit based on the damage dealt. Okay, level 75 is a really interesting tier. We introduced the concept of runic empowerment for Cataclysm with the idea of making sure that the rotations didn't feel too, we call it the metronome, when you're like, I know a rune is coming back now a rune's coming back now, and you can get to the point where you're just hitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we introduced runic empowerment to mix that up a little bit. Some players don't really care for the mechanic. They think it's too RNG, they want a little more control. You can make other criticisms about it. So we thought it was a great candidate to stick here as a talent. If you like it, choose it. If not, you have 2 other choices here. You can take the Runic Corruption, which just increases the rate you get runes back, or this is a really modified Blood Tap, where now you can take a depleted rune and turn it into a death rune. And now, the final tier, level 90, is all about awesome crowd control. Gorfien's Grasp, probably the easiest way to talk about this is AE Death Grip. Yeah. Remorseless Winter is kind of similar to the Lich King's ability himself. It's kind of a replacement for Hungering Cold. We had trouble balancing Hungering Cold at the end with the instant nature, and we didn't think the cast time really went over very well. So here, you can still do control, but it takes a little while to stack that 5 stacks up and then stuns the target at the end. And then finally, Desecrated Ground here. When you stand within the area, you're also immune to crowd control effects. It's also worth noting that all 3 of these abilities do some amount of damage. You know, again, we want them to be apple-to-apples choices, to where if you're picking one of these abilities, you're not going to say, well, I have to pick this one just because it does a trivial amount of damage. Cool so far? Seem good? You with me? We're going to build a talent calculator. I'm sure many of you are going to go home and build talent calculators after this presentation. We'll hope to have something up on our website pretty soon where you can go and read all these tooltips. You don't have to furiously iPhone everything, but I'm sure you will anyway. The Druid. So one of the fun things we did with the Druid is we tried to have different tiers based on different themes of being a Druid. Level 15 is all themed about being a cat. Doesn't mean that only the feral cat spec is interested in these. It means that they're just kind of themed that way. Feline Swiftness is the movement ability we have now. Displacer Beast is a really fun ability that lets you kind of move in a random direction and get out of any kind of dots that are on you at the time. And then Tireless Pursuit is basically a second dash. So if you want to be the really mobile guy getting around the battlefield, you can do Tireless Pursuit. You'll see a lot of the Druid abilities will say something like, this ability activates X. So rather than having to jump to Cat and then hit Displacer Beast, if you're a Moonkin and you hit Displacer Beast, you'll go into Cat as part of that. Okay, level 30 is kind of a healing tier. You know, rested Druids are going to care a lot about this, but because the Druid's a hybrid class, we wanted the other specs to feel like they could do a little bit of healing as well, even if it's something they're using on themselves. So Nature Swiftness is your next spell is instant. It's pretty similar to what we have today. Renewal is a big heal that you can do on yourself. And then Cenarian Ward, you designate a target and put a shield on them, and then they'll get healed when the shield gets broken. Okay, Tier 45 is, has some crowd control in here. Fairy Swarm is one of those spells that replaces Fairy Fire, but in this case it's also more powerful than Fairy Fire because it does the snare as well. Mass Entanglement's exactly what it sounds like. Root everything. And then we thought it'd be a lot of fun to put Typhoon in here, so if you want to be the bear with Typhoon, here's your chance. Level 60 is a pretty cool tier. What we did in this case is we said, let's take something cool that different talent trees have and make it available to everyone. So Wild Charge is a new version of Feral Charge. If you take this talent, you get a lot of different movement abilities, one for every different form you can go into. So if you're Bear, you get the Bear Charge. If you're Moonkin, you get the Moonkin Charge. The way Incarnation works is, depending on your spec, it activates a super powerful version of your spec. So if you like Tree of Life, this is where you get Tree of Life. If you want to say, you know, I would like to be a cat that kind of turns into the super powered cat version, you can also pick this talent. There's super boomkin and everything in here. And then finally, Force of Nature. It's not just the 3 treants you know and love today, but the 3 treants do different things depending on your spec. We didn't want to have the gigantic tooltip here. It works a little bit like the Guardian of Ancient Kings, where there's a variant depending on each of the 4 Druid specs. Remember, there's 4 Druid specs now. All right. Obviously a bear theme. Demoralizing Shout and Demoralizing Roar was one of those abilities that we weren't sure the game really needed anymore. They were kind of just maintenance-y. The debuff wasn't that interesting. We thought, let's just get rid of them and focus the tank debuffs around the more interesting Thunderclap and Sunder and things like that. So this is not the Demoralizing Roar you have today. This Demoralizing Roar is actually CC and does a group disorient. Ursul's Vortex, it can be used in any shapeshift form, but it's bear themed and it pulls all the enemies to you in wind. And then Bear Hug is a really interesting kind of stun where you're a bear, you've grabbed the bad guy, they're stunned, but you have to sit there and keep stunning them. And if you walk away, they're gonna break out. All right. Level 90, I mentioned before, we really wanted the kit to remind players the kit of the Druid is you can do lots of different things. That was always what the Druid is originally about. We've moved a little bit away from that by letting players specialize so much into, you know, I'm a cat, all I care about is cat stuff. I'm not going to pay attention to anything else. So level 90, we give you a choice of how you want to be a shapeshifter. There's a lot of different things here. Heart of the Wild feels really powerful. It's the one that says, you know, even though I'm a balanced Druid, I still want to be a fairly good healer. I'm not as good a healer as a Resto Druid, but I'm willing to give up a talent point and be a pretty good healer. Same thing is true of Feral. This Feral, the Feral spec, if you pick Heart of the Wild, gives you the ability to have better armor in bear form and have a little higher intellect, but you're not going to be as powerful as a Druid who picks that spec. So that's, Heart of the Wild is more about focusing on that form. Master Shapeshifter has to do with the actual act of shifting itself. So every time you shift, you increase your damage and attack power, which stacks up. So if you shift multiple times, you can build up this buff on yourself. And then Disentanglement, when you shapeshift, it removes roots and does a heal. And there's the full Druid tree. All right, still with me? Still excited? Keep going? It's the hunter. Okay, the top hunter tier is about arrows and ammunition. This is something we've kind of flirted with a few times, and we think this is a great place to deliver it. You can have 3 different types of ammunition just by choosing the talent. The frozen arrows do the kind of thing that Frost usually does in our game. The arcane arrows restore focus, and then the venom-tipped arrows put a dot on. So again, hopefully it depends. It might depend a little bit on the situation you're in. If you're in PvP, maybe the arcane arrows look like a good choice, but gosh, having the ability to freeze or having that dot could be really attractive too. Level 30 is a crowd control tier. Silencing shot, wyvern sting, pretty much the abilities we have today. Intimidation is now here, and we went ahead and changed Beastmaster's level 10 ability to kill command, which has always kind of made sense. Level 45, it's all about how you want to use disengage. So every hunter will have something cool that happens when they disengage, and they choose it here. You can buff your movement speed, you can buff your kind of avoidance, or you can heal yourself after a disengage. Hunters have often asked for a self-heal, and here you can get a good one. Here's one about survivability, being slippery or perhaps being a little bit tanky. Crouching Tiger, the existing talent that can improve your disengage and deterrence. Aspect of the Iron Hawk just reduces the damage you take outright. And then this is a more powerful version of the Spirit Bond that lets you and your pet heal as long as your pet's still alive. Okay, level 75 is about resources in 3 different ways. You have 2 clickies, Fervor, which gives you focus to you and your pet, Readiness, which finishes the cooldown to your abilities, and then Thrill of the Hunt, which is just kind of a passive ability to get some focus back. So here's one of those opportunities. Some players really like having the active control. Some players would rather not have another button on their bar, and they're happy just to have it kind of happen over time, even if that means it's a little more RNG for them. So a great example of customization here. And then one thing we haven't seen a lot of yet in the Hunter tree are traps. So level 90 is all about your traps. Flash freeze, no longer your freezing trap no longer has a cooldown. You can keep using it as much as you want. Black ice is a really interesting one. It increases the movement reduction speed of ice trap, but then it also improves your movement speed as long as you're moving through the trap. So it's kind of the buff nerf there. And then transmorph trap, you put a toxin on this trap that actually turns the target into a beast. So imagine they work a little like Hex, where they're obviously not very powerful as long as they're a beast there. One other thing I wanted to mention about hunters, because I know the question will come up, is what happens to the pet talents? And the way we think we're going to handle that is we're going to let hunters choose any of the 3 specs for any pet. So you can have a ferocity, tenacity, or cunning pet. If you want to have a bear doing DPS, or you want to have a moth with you in the raid, you can do that and just choose, which one you want to, if you wanted to do the damage roll or the tanking roll. And the whole hunter spread. The mage. The mage is a great example of a class that works really well with this talent system because historically we always had a lot of the most fun abilities for crowd control, survivability, and utility in Frost, and then we always had trouble increasing their damage because they had so much utility here. So we figured it would be a lot of fun just to take the utility, put it throughout the talent tree, and then just let Frost do different types of damage, because obviously you're doing frost damage here, than arcane and fire. In this Brave New World, Arcane Blast is arcane only, Fireball is fire only, and Frostbolt is frost only. I know, it's crazy. So, level 15 is a very chilly tier. We have the existing Ring of Frost, which probably wins the award for the most levels jumped, all the way down to 15. It goes up against Cone of Cold, and this is the improved Cone of Cold version, so it also freezes. So the only Cone of Cold out there is the one that freezes, and you don't get just kind of the lame Cone of Cold without that. And then a new way of freezing, Frostjaw, which will silence and freeze a target. Okay. I was mentioning with the Warlock, we kind of like the feel of the mage to be like slippery and glass cannony, where we want to try to shift the Warlock back to be a little more tanky as a caster. So these are all abilities that kind of help mages survive and get away. Greater invisibility is an upgrade to invisibility. That it doesn't, in this case, it doesn't really replace invisibility. It just makes your invisibility more powerful. But the key here is it removes the 2 dots. The existing cauterize that only fire had access to before, and then cold snap finishing the cooldown on some of your most powerful escape and control mechanisms. Okay, 45 tier is about movement. Presence of mind obviously allows you to get a fast spell off, instantly. It's up against Scorch. Now, this is the old improved Scorch. So Scorch can always be cast by moving, but you don't have, can always be cast while moving, but you don't have Scorch unless you pick this talent. So if you're in a situation where you feel like you're going to be moving a lot, you can take Scorch here and Scorch as you move around. Arcane Flows is kind of a variant on that, where it lets you cast the next 2 spells while moving. So it's like a cooldown you pop, then while you're moving you can cast those 2 spells. You get to choose between Scorch or Arcane Flows. I should mention here, we're going to make sure that Scorch isn't the no-brainer choice for fire mages. We're not going to have to worry about, oh, well, fire mages buff all their fire damage, so of course they're only going to take Scorch. We want these to be attractive to any of the 3 specs. Okay, level 60 is another kind of escape and control level. We have the mana shield here, but it has Enchantress Absorption baked in, so when the shield is destroyed, it does a knockback. Up against Blazing Speed, which lets you move faster a short period of time, and then Ice Barrier. This is a fun tier. Polymorph's a signature mage spell, and as we've done with some of the other classes, we wanted to do something that was all focused on that spell. The way this works is Sickly Polymorph, they regenerate health slower. So you can polymorph someone who's pretty injured and they're not gonna heal back quickly. Heavy Polymorph does a stun to the poly target, and Double Polymorph lets you have 2 sheep at once. Except we really wanted these to feel like game changers. We wanted you to see a mage doing a double polymorph and be like, whoa, what's going on out here? I've never seen anything like this. And then crowd control at level 90. Mages are great at crowd control. Here you can have Blast Wave or Dragon's Breath, both of which do a little bit of damage as well, and then Slow. And there's the full mage tree. The Paladin. So at the top is a tier that's about movement, which I know sounds pretty crazy for a Paladin. We totally redesigned Speed of Light. Now think of it as a sprint that also does some healing while you're sprinting. It's up against a modified Long Arm of the Law, so whenever you judge, you get a speed movement. We don't think we need to have the minimum range thing anymore, so judge makes you fast. And then this is a very different Pursuit of Justice, which gives you a 10% movement speed for every charge of Holy Power. So you can think about holding the Holy Power for a little bit so you can go fast, or using it because you need to use it on something else. Tier 30 is a crowd control tier. Fist of Justice replaces Hammer of Justice, but it's a very short cooldown, so you can just go around being the stunned in here. We wanted to make Repentance available to any Paladin. But we wanted to make it a really hard choice because we put a much improved Seal of Justice that does a really legit snare. '45 is a survival tier. Hopefully it'll be a hard choice for the Prot Paladins, but there's good stuff in here for the other 2 as well. Blessed Life is the modification of the current talent that gives you Holy Power when you take damage. There's only direct damage, so just standing in an AE isn't going to flood you with Holy Power. Sacred Shield is the automatic defense mechanism when you get brought down low, and then Ardent Defender is the activated one. So again, you want to be active, take Ardent Defender. If you want to not have to worry about so many buttons, take Sacred Shield. Paladins heal. We wanted to have a healing tier. There's a very redesigned Selfless Healer, all about Flash of Light. One of the things we did is gave Flash of Light to all Paladins, but Holy Light and Divine Light are holy only. We figured if the other 2 Paladins really wanted to cast a heal, they would want to cast a fast heal, so we based it on Flash of Light. If you've read the tooltip by now, you can also see we've taken out the RNG here because it just stacks up to 2 times to then give you a 100% chance to have a free, powerful flash of light on someone. Eternal Glory is the existing talent, which gives you a chance not to use Holy Power in your heals. We threw in Light of Dawn here, since really now Word of Glory is the single target, Light of Dawn is the group target, and in this case, every Holy Paladin will have Light of Dawn. And then think of Holy Shield as a absorption version of Word of Glory. So not every Paladin will be able to have a shield, but if you want it, there's one right here. 75 is about utility. Veneration is a new idea where if you put down a consecration, your allies in the consecration are immune to movement impairing effects for a little bit of time. Acts of Sacrifice is the existing talent that lets you cleanse snares off of yourself and also reduces the cooldown in your hands a little bit. And then Clemency is a way to immediately finish the cooldown in your hands so that you can cast them again. Finally, level 90 is a really exciting tier that's about burst and cooldowns. Common complaint we get is cooldowns are cool, but Paladins have a little too many of them. So here we let you pick the way you want to do it. And I'll walk through these real quick. Holy Avenger, when you have Guardian of Ancient Kings out, your abilities don't cost Holy Power. Sanctified Wrath varies depending on your spec. For Holy, you can Holy Shock with no cooldown. For Prot, you can Judge with no cooldown. And for Ret, you can use Hammer of Wrath as you can today. We also put Divine Purpose in here. It's a fun talent for some Ret Paladins, but others get frustrated by the RNG. Here's a way to get Holy Power that's not so tied to the cooldown. Sometimes you'll have more Holy Power than others. And the full Paladin tree. Everyone still here? We're getting there. We're in the home stretch. Stay with me. It's the Priest. Priest is a challenge because we have 2 healing specs and 1 damage spec, and we really wanted to make sure that the choices were there. We didn't want to just have, hey, here's 2 healing choices, and then here's the thing that Shadow chooses. So these are some pretty creative talents. Really excited about these. Level 15 is about control. We tried to let players recreate the existing builds they had, so if you just like Psychic Scream, take Psychic Scream and you're good. If you want to try something different, we have 2 new forms of crowd control in here. The Void Tendrils rise from the ground and can root all targets within an area. And the Siphene is kind of an interesting idea where a little Siphene comes out and will Psychic Scream repeatedly on different targets. Level 30 is a fun tier that adds kind of a little wrinkle to some of your existing abilities. Body and Soul, the existing holy talent that increases movement speed after someone's been shielded. Path of the Devout increases your movement speed when you levitate, which, face it, could be quite often. And then Phantasm, when you fade, you remove movement effects and give yourself a slight speed boost. Level 45 is about damage and healing. Again, we didn't want to just be, okay, Shadow always has to take this one, so we wanted to have choices in here. We have Surge of Light and Surge of Darkness, which is kind of the clear casting, and there's a different version for Shadow to make sure the damage still works. Divine Star fires a projectile out that does damage and healing, and then comes back and does damage and healing over the same path again. Never had a spell that works quite like this. Thought it'd be fun to try. And then Archangel. Evangelism is just a core ability now. Everyone will have it, so you don't have to worry about what that means. And then you can have the Archangel or the Dark Archangel to consume Evangelism or Shadow Orbs. Level 60 is about keeping the Priest alive. Anyone can have Desperate Prayer, just a big instant heal. Angelic Bulwark increases your shield when you shield yourself. And then Final Prayer is a passive where when you get hurt, without having to click an ability, you'll get a little bit of help. Level 75 is about power. Twist and Fate, it's a very powerful talent, totally passive. It increases damage and healing on targets that are wounded. Existing Power Infusion from Disc, now available to everyone. And we merged Serendipity and Mind Melt into one talent choice here that lets you reduce the mana cost and stack the ability, whether it's the heal for Serendipity or the Mind Spike for Shadow. 3 crazy new abilities at level 90. Vow of Unity, imagine that you designate a champion for a short period of time, and you can, when you heal that person, it heals you a little bit like a reverse beacon. Doesn't last the whole time though. Void Shift's really crazy talent. Hopefully you can pull this off. It just swaps health percentage with your target. So
That's all. No big deal.
very simple. Obviously, a lot of ramifications. If the the tank is at 50% and you're at 100%, you can swap that health and then quickly heal yourself up. I know, it's awesome. And then Vampiric Dominance is a greatly improved Vampiric Embrace. Shadow used to have this this cool vibe of the self-healer, of the kind of passive heal the rest of your group. We thought by making you choose one of these 3 abilities, we could offer it in a more powerful version. So hopefully we'll see some more Vampiric Priest out there. But again, Holy or Disc could take this, they choose. And the Priest Tree. Rogues. Like the Mage, the Rogue really benefits from this new model because a lot of the cool stuff, which tended to be in subtlety, is now spread out. Should read these tooltips. These are pretty powerful talents all tied into stealth. You can move fast. Your stealth doesn't break for 3 seconds, which has a lot of ramifications if you're a rogue. And Shadow Focus, which is while you're stealth, your abilities are free. Obviously, you can't take both of those together or you would be broken. And that's kind of what we really like about the talent system. Level 30 is about control and survivability. This is the existing Deadly Throw with a nice movement speed debuff on it as well. The way Nerve Strike works is if you kidney shot or cheap shot someone, it also debuffs their damage for a short period of time. Obviously, the target has to be susceptible to kidney shot or cheap shot for that to work. And then this is the existing combat readiness where you can kind of build up resistance to someone who's trying to beat your face in with his Titan's grip. 45 is about staying alive. Cheat Death is up against a new type of poison. We tried to introduce a few types of rogue poisons. Leeching poison, as you beat on someone, it will heal you for a little bit of the damage dealt. And improved recuperate, which I think rogues are pretty familiar with. Level 60. Here is your Shadow Step as promised, but you'll have to choose it or Preparation. We went ahead and put the glyph part of Prep in here as well, so you get all of those abilities listed. Burst of Speed is exactly what it sounds like. It is a sprint on no cooldown that costs energy. Okay, level 75, we have Deadly Brew. Whenever you use Wound or Mind Numbing, you also get crippling on the target. Paralytic Poison will let you paralyze someone. You have to hit them a few times before you get enough stacks to actually paralyze them. And then Dirty Tricks lets you, your Gouge and Blind won't break from damage from poisons and bleeds. You can try to debuff someone a little bit, and then Gouge or Blind them, and they'll continue to take damage. And then, let's see what we did here. You can have any ability you want from any of the bottom of the talent trees as rogues. Shadow Dance is pretty much the existing Shadow Dance, but Killing Spree and Vendetta are fairly different, so let me talk about those. This new Killing Spree, the way it works is you can press the button multiple times, and every time gives you a teleport. We hope this is a little less disorienting than the current kind of bounce all over. You push it once, you blink, you push it another time, you'll go somewhere else. And you can do it as many times as you feel like it within the 5-second window. Vendetta, the real key here is that bottom part about Vengeful Strike. Once you have a Vendetta target, you can use your Vengeful Strike ability. This is the ability that comes with Vendetta. And you'll notice the big key there is that little bit about 30-yard range. Pretty nice for rogues who have problems with target switching or movement or just want to be a ranged class for a short period of time. There's the rogue. You're starting to get it now, and why we're so excited about this new talent model, why we think this is going to be a lot more fun to monkey around with your class and saying, I'm a little bored of my current talents, I'm going to mix it up a little bit. Shaman. So Frozen Power is the existing Frost Shock Roots. One of the nice things about this new talent model, too, is we can get rid of, currently we have a lot of these little junky bits at the beginning of talents that say, oh, it also does this other thing because you probably don't have Frost Shock yet because it's a higher level spell. We can get rid of all of that and just kind of simplify and clean up the talents. Earth Grab Totem I mentioned before. It's a big AE root totem. And Repulsion Totem, which keeps targets from getting close to you. Level 30 is about survival. The existing Nature's Guardian, which increases your health when you get hurt. Stone Bulwark is a new totem that you drop down to put a shield on you. Remember, there's no buff totems anymore, so you can choose which Earth Totem you want to have out here. And then Astral Shift will actually take you into another phase so that you take less damage while you're there. All right, let me explain Improved Ghost Wolf here. We went ahead and gave the instant Ghost Wolf to every shaman. And then flipped it around, so if you want the Freedom Wolf, you take the talent along with the instant wolf. Windwalk will grant all your group immunity to movement impairing effects while it's out. And then the Tranquil Mind Totem is kind of the same effect as Aura Mastery. In this case, rather than reducing pushback, it makes you immune to interruption and silence while it's up. Level 60 is a healing tier. We have a new Healing Tide Totem, which kind of imagine a little tranquility for the shaman. Ancestral Guidance has a chance of copying a heal to another target. Or when you deal damage or heal, you can get a heal another target. And then Fortifying Waters offers a little bit of damage reduction for Healing Ring. Level 75 is about burst for the most part. The key part of Elemental Mastery, don't worry so much about the activating the next Lightning Bolt or whatever. It's pretty much a self-bloodlust in addition to the normal one you have. Or Heroism if you're Alliance. Nature Swiftness is the activated version to give you a fast spell. It has a little bit of passive haste as well. And then Echo the Elements, you can kind of imagine this as your own personal Dragon Wrath. It has a chance to clone a spell that does the same thing. Level 90 is what we call a high concept tier. These are all about doing crazy things with your totems. So, Elemental Harmony lets you have multiple totems of the same kind. So if you want 3 Earth totems out at the same time, take Elemental Harmony. Totemic Restoration, if you replace or destroy a totem, it eats into its cooldown. So say you drop one of your raid cooldown totems, then you see someone else puts down Power Red Barrier, you quickly pull that totem back up and drop another totem, and then your Bulwark totem or whatever will be available again pretty quickly. And then finally, Totemic Projection lets you move your totems, but the coolest thing about this is you're not just moving them to you, you can decide I'm going to take these totems and throw them over there and put them there instead. So I love this tier because it's 3 super powerful things, and they're all going to feel really exciting, and you can kind of decide which one you want and mix them up over time. Warlocks. You're going to see a lot of healing and a lot of survivability in here because we really want to emphasize that as kind of pushing the Mage and Warlock a little farther apart in the design space. So start right off with some different ways to get health. Dark Regeneration, just click to get some of your health back. It takes a little bit of time to build up here, so it's not just an instant burst of healing. Soul Leech just lets your Shadow Bolt, Incinerate, and Malefic Grasp, we're probably saying, what is that? Heal you. And then Harvest of Life drains life from the target and other targets in the area. Now, something I want to point out here is in the blue text, we have Empowered Channel. This is a cool thing we're trying with a lot of the Warlock channels, where if you cast the channel again before it's finished, it increases the duration. So rather than sitting there and channeling the whole time, you channel, 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 and now you have a nice long duration spell. It feels pretty cool. Okay, here are 3 different ways to control the bad guys. You can have an AE Fear or an AE Stun, or you can have Mortal Coil is a new design on Death Coil. It's not about doing damage, but it is about making them run away and healing yourself. .45 is about survivability. Hour of Twilight returns some health back when you get hurt. It's a passive, unlike the previous regeneration one. Soul Link shares damage with your pet while it's up with your demon, but the demon has to be alive. And then Sacrificial Pact is the kind of the existing Voidwalker ability. Your pet sacrifices itself, but also makes you immune to damage for a short period of time. Level 60 has 3 ways to heal yourself or avoid damage. Bloodstone's an instant heal. Spell Drain you cast on yourself, and then the next single target spell to come at you heals you for half the damage it would have dealt instead. And the Nether Ward, transform your Twilight Ward. What Twilight Ward is we just combine a Holy Shadow Ward into one. So you have your ward up, and then if you have Nether Ward, it replaces your Twilight Ward and makes you, reduces damage to that school that you get hit by for 12 seconds. The really cool stuff is in the next 2 tiers. 75 is about your pet, and you can do 3 crazy things here. The Grimoire of Supremacy basically replaces your demon with a more powerful demon. This is permanent and passive, so if you take this, you can have a Shivan or an Abyssal as your pet instead of the current run-of-the-mill Warlock pets. All of these are more powerful. They have slightly more powerful versions of their current abilities. The Grimoire of Service is a 30-second cooldown that lets you have 2 pets out at the same time. And then Grimoire of Sacrifice, this is something else we've heard a lot, is we never really liked the idea of the Destrolock who just gets rid of their imp and then just doesn't have a pet the rest of the time. But players would tell us, I really like that mechanic. Is there any way of bringing it back? So we thought if the pet wasn't gone permanently, that could be a cool thing. We really like the feel that, like, the hunter cares about his bear or his rabbit, his bear or his tiger. You can make rabbits tameable pets, whatever. But the Warlock doesn't really care about the demon. The demon's just kind of a tool for the Warlock, and if it makes sense to kill the demon in order to burst your DPS for a little bit of time, the Warlock will probably take that trade. And then level 90 is themed about demons, not your demons, but some really powerful demons from Warcraft lore. All of these do some pretty crazy things. Archimon lets you curse an which will also take damage you do to that enemy. Kil'jaeden's Cunning lets you cast while moving, straight up. It doubles the cast time or the period of the spell you're casting while you're moving. And then Illidan's Guile lets you do a little bit of splash damage to other enemies in the area with your 3 main nukes there. All right. Hopefully the Warriors are all back with their beer by now. So the first tier is the Charge tier. And the first thing I have to explain about what we did with Charge is we thought it was kind of lame that both Juggernaut and Warbringer were kind of the same talent that lets you use Charge in combat. So now Charge can just be used in any stance and in combat by any warrior. So you choose Juggernaut if you want to charge a lot. It just has a lower cooldown on the charge. Double Time lets you charge twice in a row before it infers the cooldown. So you can charge once and then charge again if you missed your target or you changed your mind. And then Warbringer puts a 5-second root at the end of your charge. Tier 30 is about survival. We put Enraged Regeneration in here. Again, warriors have a lot of defensive cooldowns, and we thought we could make Enraged Regen a little more powerful if we made it a talent and made you choose it instead of the other 2. Second Wind we also combined with Blood Craze so that it's when you take a stun or an immobilize effect or you just take damage, you can regen some health and rage. And then we liked the idea of Impending Victory, but it never really was as cool as we thought it could be. So this basically turns Victory Rush into a core rotational ability. It adds a rage cost and a cooldown, but you can use it any time. Level 45 is the crowd control tier. You can have Throwdown, which is your basic stun. You can have Piercing Howl, which is the big AE snare. Or Cripple, think about your auto attack hits, and your Ren Ticks is basically applying Hamstring without you having to do it. I know, but you can only pick one. What are you going to do? Level 60 is about silencing those annoying casters. This is the existing gag order where you're Pummel and Heroic Throw will silence. Root Interruption is a fun talent. It is a DPS increase, but it's so minimal and situational that we're not too worried about every warrior out there taking it. Who knows, the shaman will probably interrupt before you get to it anyway. And then Disrupting Shout's a new idea. It's an AE interrupt. It's not something we've ever done before. So you can interrupt a whole group at once with this shout. So level 75 is about a little bit of having fun with burst and resource management. Deadly Calm we decided to make just focused on the Heroic Strike and Cleaves. That's pretty much what they're the most useful for. So it just gives you 3 free Heroic Strike or Cleaves. Death Wish enrages you, which is important for warriors. They do more damage. They let Fury warriors use Raging Blow. And then it also increases your rage generation during that time. And then Bull Rush is a new idea. Whenever you charge or intervene, it enrages you. So you have another way to get enraged on demand. Maybe you'll see those warriors moving around the battlefield. You can think of fun things to do by getting this and then looking at one of those charge talents on the first tier. And last, and certainly not least, let's let you absorb that for a minute. We just took Shockwave and Blade Storm and made them available to any warrior. And then we knew we needed something really powerful to compete with that. So we went back and looked at Warcraft 3 and we said, hey, that avatar sounds like a really fun ability to give to warriors. In this case, it's not themed just as a defensive cooldown, but increases your damage dealt, gives you excess rage, and makes you immune to movement impairing effects. Chieftain and the Mountain King all here together. You decide which one you want to be. Change is scary, and we know one of the initial reactions to hearing this talent thing is, wow, I used to get talents like every level, and now I'm only getting a talent every 15 levels. There's so fewer choices. I only get 6 talents instead of the 70 I used to get back in Burning Crusade or something. We really want the quality of the choice to be more interesting than the quantity of the choice. We want to focus on very cool talents that make you feel like you're playing differently, you're doing things you could never do before, and less about, well, someone mathed out that this talent over here was a 2% DPS upgrade, so I'm only going to pick 2 out of 3 ranks here. And honestly, what I think most of us did was just go and tried to find someone with a good build rather than having fun experimenting ourselves. If you think about your current talent trees, just think about the class you play a lot for a minute, and there's some really cool talents in that tree. Most of those we're just going to give you for free now. So if you pick the right spec, you're going to get all that stuff anyway, and if some we're even going to elevate to the core class level. Then there's the really boring talents, the things that either no one took or were small DPS increases. I mean, you're glad to have them. More DPS or healing or survivability is always nice. They're not super compelling. You're not like, wow, I'm so glad I finally got this thing that made me have more armor. And then there are the actual fun talents, the talents that really felt like game changers. And that's what we want this new talent system to all be about. None of these are set in stone. I'd be surprised if this is what the talent trees look like by the time we ship, but you can definitely see the kind of philosophy, the kind of ideas we're going for. We're going to be super excited to get a lot of feedback. I'm sure it's going to start coming the second we step off the stage here, find out about what's overpowered, what's a terrible idea, what we're going to do to ruin the game with a crazy druid ability or something. There's plenty of time to ask questions. We have 2 Q&As tomorrow that'll be appropriate. We're going to do a class item and professions QA. And then there'll be a QA with the WoW leads following that. And then I'm going to tell you about an online developer Q&A that we're going to do October 27th, where you guys can write in questions that the class designers can try to answer as a group about what are we trying to do with this ability, or hey, this tier isn't as interesting as I thought it could be. Thank you very much. Hope you guys are excited as we are.
Thank you for attending the World of Warcraft Class Talent System Panel. Up next.
State the nature of your medical emergency.
All right, BlizzCon 2011 continues here. The fans are playing StarCraft. And coming up, we've actually got some breaking news on StarCraft in a multiplayer panel where we're going to hear more about the game and the action. And there's Kerrigan, who's an important part of Heart of the Swarm. We'll be covering that live here on DirecTV in a few